Cool, cool, cool. We are live. So, we'll have Eric Thompson joining us in a few minutes, a couple of minutes. Um, I just wanted to go live a few minutes beforehand, just because um, I'm using OBS now, and I just wanted to make sure it works. So if I like, let's see, if I like, boom, if you can see my OBS settings. Cool, 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 cool. Well, let's make sure this works. Hold on. Then it goes to stream. Hey, Streamlab. Hey, or Streamyard. Hey, fancy, fancy. Okay. And I'm hoping that my sound is working. It should be going through the same. I had it going through because on OBS the sound is very bad. I'm always struggling with it. It's always way too quiet, and yeah, kind of crazy. Here, let's fix this. Yeah, it's always way too quiet, and the compressor on uh, OBS is also very bad. And sometimes I've tried to use like a virtual cable through Ableton and use the compressor through Ableton, but that doesn't seem to work very well either. You seem to get a lot more hiss and a lot more yeah. So I'm still trying to figure out the technical issues going on. Um, yeah. Here, I'm gonna send a link. Let's see. I'll share the stream as well. Go on Twitter. And then we'll go YouTube. Sweet. Made a couple different posts. Shared it a few places. So we should be all set. Mm. Dude, how many? What's it called? Facebook, but not Facebook. Threads, Threads, dude. I just joined it today, so go follow me on Threads. And dude, follow me on Twitter too. Go follow me on Twitter. It's Jerem Eubanks on everything. Go follow me on Instagram. I don't really post on Instagram, but follow me on Threads. Follow me on Twitter, and friend me on Facebook. Look me up. Dude. Look me up on Facebook. Become my friend on Facebook too. That way we can all vibe together. Hooray! Hooray! I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what we're gonna talk about. Me and Eric. Um, I definitely want to bring up veganism again. I want to press him on veganism. Always, but it might be cool to talk about politics too. So yeah, we'll just hang out for a minute. He should be joining any minute now. We were scheduled at 8:45, so. Oh, I want to do that. Hold on, the time test. All right, ready for this? Are you ready for this? Here, we're gonna here. Let's do this. Okay, check this out. Check this out. Okay, see how I do. Fuck, fuck, oh fuck, that sucks. That sucks. Fuck, 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 fuck. Okay, we'll try this again. Try this again. Wait, isn't the plugin not working? Oh shit. Ah, fuck. Okay, try again. Try again. Oh, dude, I've gotten worse, dude. I've gotten worse. Oh, here. Eric's here. Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going.
This
My
game.
headphones just don't want to connect. I guess I'm just using my phone.
Oh shoot.
So
I'm doing
what's
this.
going on, man?
Oh, I'm doing this got rhythm game, and I've gotten worse at it, dude. It's driving me crazy. Like,
How long have you been going at it?
um, Well, I mean, I've been playing this game off and on for uh, a while, but at least today it's just like maybe 3 or 4 times. Um,
Mm,
but I used to like I've gotten I think my high score is like 970, and I haven't been able to break 900
with rhythm
since.
games, I usually have to like if I notice that my score's getting worse, I have to stop for like 20 minutes and come back, and I'll usually do
Yeah.
better. I do that with roguelites. That's usually why I like get into that headspace. Let me see if I can get. Ah, there we go. Rotated.
I've
Someone
also sort of
might be able to hear me.
I've in your I guess similar boat as you're kind of working with technical stuff. I've been working with technical stuff too. So this is my first time actually using OBS on the stream.
Yeah.
Um, Usually what I've done is I've just gone straight through StreamYard. Um, but then that makes it so I can't do as many like uh have as many
Like
screens and stuff up. So
yeah.
but it seems to
Right
be
now,
working out.
my thing is I'm trying to figure out how to get StreamYard to stream to my channel while I'm streaming with you because I don't fully understand how to do that.
Oh, I believe there's a button you can press. So it should be up in like the top right corner or so. Because I do that with Carson all the time.
See, I'm on mobile
Oh, yeah, okay. So I always stream on desktop, so I wouldn't know what the mobile is.
settings, maybe. Nah, I just got to look into it a little more. Yeah, I haven't heard from Carson in a while. Shame.
Yeah, I mean he's here and he's doing stuff.
Yeah, he said he wanted to get together, but that was like a month ago, and he just hasn't seen he hasn't been responding to my email.
Yeah, he's I mean as he's gotten more popular, he gets a lot of emails and stuff, so sometimes it's hard, but
Yeah,
um I know we just did a stream on the 4th we did a stream.
nice. Yeah, I see his stuff come up from time to time. I'm just trying to get back with him so we can try to set something up again. Because I don't think we've done anything since I got hurt. It's been a while.
Yeah, you guys need to do something.
I know he said that Harley wants to talk to me again, and like I've got my own opinions about Harley, but like I wouldn't mind continuing our little debate that we were having.
So Harley, I don't know if I'm
Harley
familiar.
is he's a British dude. He was debating me about abortion, and he has he definitely has some views. I'll say
Interesting.
that.
Well, I love the topic of abortion. Do you want to start talking about abortion?
We could, sure.
Yeah, so what's your position?
I am very, very pro. Like extremely pro abortion.
How pro are we talking? Like are we talking afterbirth abortion as well?
No.
We talking eight?
Afterbirth is too far.
We're talking 8.
Well, 8 months I would advocate for just because the only time that like third trimester abortions happen is out of necessity. Most people who are going to get one that want one will get one either by the beginning of the second or in the first. I think it's like 93% of them happen within the first like 10 weeks or something. But like 8 months, that's usually like a life threatening issue. Let's see if I can figure out how to rotate this.
Gotcha.
Whoa.
So as far as like morals go, because like I understand sometimes legally and morally it can be separated. Um,
Yeah, like in my state, a 6 week abortion ban just went through on the first, and that cut it down from 15, which is already too short. But 6 weeks is essentially just a ban. Like most people don't know they're pregnant until 7.
yeah. Okay.
I just got
Is
off the
there?
day shift.
Yeah. Is there any so like if so let's just say someone's having an abortion at like 8 months and they just like it's not they're not their life's not threatened or anything like that. The baby's life isn't threatened. They just want to have one for fun.
Nah, usually I'd be fine with that too. I'm very what's the word I would use? I hesitate to use the word liberal because that has like a political connotation, but it's the right word in this sense. Like as far as I'm concerned, it's a choice. Like abortion is one of the like oldest things that humans do. We've seen evidence that they've been doing it as long as humans
Oh, you froze there.
really have like much of like I used to be a Christian, but I don't have a lot of like a religious background. I don't have much like infringing on that for me. So to my mind, it's more like a live and let live kind of thing because I know that I've known a lot of people who've been through the foster care system, and in America, it's a fucking meat grinder. And then there's like people who have kids that it turns out they can't afford or that they didn't really want, and that's not good for the kids either. Like in my mind, it's a matter of harm reduction than over anything else.
Gotcha. So like even we're gonna make it some extreme like so even if it's like a 6-month-old
Is that me
like say
freezing or is that you freezing?
I know you were freezing for a second there. I don't know if I'm freezing too. But
That's what I just said. Was it me or you?
oh gotcha.
Okay, so it looks
Um
like we're good now.
okay, good. So like imagine like you rather than like a fetus inside, right? It's like a full grown like 6-month-old baby. Um like say instead of like lasting 9 months, it lasted 6 months longer. So now it's like this fully grown 6-month-old baby. Um, do you
Mm.
see an issue with aborting
That
that?
would be a really life-threatening situation.
Yeah, well, so I'm
Whoa.
just wondering like what's the is there are there any scenarios where you think like just from a moral sense it would be wrong to have an abortion?
My internet just did a little reset. I had to disconnect from the Wi-Fi because our power just flickered. So we should be good now. I'm using my data.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Did you hear the last question?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I'm wondering like are there any scenarios at all where just even in like a hypothetical where you would view an abortion as immoral?
Hmm. I don't know. Hmm. I mean, if you went to like an extreme like conspiracy adrenochrome kind of thing, like maybe, but this is not even a thing that would make sense really. Like in the real world, nah, I haven't been posed one yet
All right,
to my mind.
let me ask you this. So before I asked you that like if the like an afterbirth abortion, you wouldn't have issues with that, right? I mean, you would have
Yeah,
issues with that. Um so then yeah,
that would be where the defining line for murder would be for me. Yeah.
gotcha. So then what's the trait, right, of a fetus.
It's sustaining on its own in a very basic sense. Like it's breathing, it's not connected to the mother anymore. It's its own entity.
So are we talking like viability? Because like Roe v. Wade
Not
type stuff.
necessarily. I used to argue viability, but I don't really like that argument so much anymore because as medical science moves forward, viability goes back further and further and further, and it just makes it less of an important argument to have.
Gotcha. So yeah.
Because I mean,
So
there's babies that are born completely inviable. Like, was it one in every like 100,000 babies is born with an organ outside of its skin? Like, there's like inviability after the fact, but that's a pretty rare case.
gotcha. Um. So would it be like a bodily autonomy argument then?
Mostly, yeah.
That like because the baby is inside the mother has a right to her bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And you would hold that all the way up until like you know the day before birth. The mother just all of a sudden decides she doesn't want her kid, she can abort it.
The last week, maybe not. I think that, to my mind, as long as it's still connected to the mother, then yeah. But like, I could see an argument for the last couple of days being a cutoff. You know what I mean? Like, there are extents that I could see, like, reasonably saying as a concession, like, sure, we could cut things back. But I don't really think there should be much, if any, like, restrictions on it. Like, for a whole bunch of reasons. As long as like the parent consents to it, to having the abortion done, it's not like forced on them. I think that's fine.
Gotcha.
I have some fairly radical views, as you might have figured out.
Fine, yeah, radical views are great for sure. So there was I heard this sort of thought experiment from the streamer Destiny,
Hmm.
and I thought it was a really good one, and it kind of shows that there's some sort of or potentially it shows that there's some sort of the mother has some sort of right of protecting um the fetus. Um, so it's like imagine you put this woman in a cabin for 9 months.
Yeah.
And in this cabin, there's also a baby there,
Okay.
and they take care of her food. They take care of her money. They say everything's taken care of. You just have to stay in here for 9 months,
Hmm.
and um, after that 9 months is done, she walks out and she's like, "All right, I did it." And then they say, "Well, where's the baby?" And then she said, "Well, I didn't feed it. I didn't want to use like my resources to take care of the baby." And the baby dies. It's like something about that feels off, right? And I don't see a huge difference between
Well, I mean, that's
um
directly starving a living being that's causing suffering. That would be the dividing line for me.
so
Is a
so
direct cause of suffering.
gotcha. So do you think a fetus can't suffer?
I think for the most part they can't, up until the very, very late stages. They don't have a developed nervous system. It's kind of like when people
Well,
say like, "Oh, when the baby has a heartbeat," but when like fetuses first have heartbeats, it's because they have a few myocardial cells, and all those cells are like made to do is pump. So as soon as there's enough of them to pass through that impulse, they start going. That doesn't mean it has a heart. It just means it has enough cells to go. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really have like a developed nervous system to feel suffering and well, I mean, they might feel pain. Like, there's an idea that plants might be able to feel pain, but there's not a lot of evidence for that. But yeah, like,
yeah.
that's not really suffering, like, to me.
So I get that. Like I know a lot of people will bring up heartbeat and stuff like this, and it's like I mean, like a yeah, it doesn't make much sense as far as heartbeat goes, and these sort of arbitrary. But I feel like the evidence is pretty clear that a fetus can feel pain, right, and can have sort of
Well,
sort of a conscious
feeling
experience up, around 20 weeks or so.
pain doesn't necessarily mean consciousness. Suffering is a little different than pain. Like, you can emotionally suffer and not be in any physical pain at all.
Yeah,
Suffering is a little broader, right? So like, if something, let's say, like, most of the time when you have an abortion, it's the pill. Otherwise, it's like the suction. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
even if there is a very, very temporary spark of pain, that's not suffering. Starving to death is a long process, and it's horrifying. Like, I don't know, like, I've been homeless. I've had to go days without eating. I don't know if you know what that feels like. A lot of people don't, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But like, you start to genuinely think about eating your own fingers. Like, that's suffering. That's a whole different ballpark.
so yeah, I mean, there's different aspects of suffering, right? There's emotional suffering, and they could possibly be some sort of like spiritual suffering, and.
Just
But
not to cut you off and change the subject, but like, how is my audio coming through? Because I'm using my phone speaker right now. I want to make sure I'm being audible very well.
oh, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm sitting like a good couple feet away, so I just want to make sure it's coming through clear.
Yeah, you're good, man.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a wide range of what counts as suffering.
Sure.
Um, but I would imagine pain, at least, it exists as a big part of suffering.
I can.
But
Like
so
I think that like a temporary shock of pain isn't necessarily suffering. Like somebody who's shot in the brainstem might feel a flash of pain before they die, but they don't suffer.
well, let me ask
Somebody
you this.
whose wrists are slit die very slowly, and that's suffering.
Let me ask you this. So uh, do you think it would be moral to cause pain onto somebody who's living? So let's imagine that they're like severely like disabled. They don't really
Mm,
have much of a conscious sort of experience, like in the sense of like their ability to suffer in this like sort of like reflection type sense. But they can feel pain.
okay.
Would it be wrong to cause them pain?
Intentionally causing pain or suffering is immoral, sure, depending on a few variables. Like it could be
Gotcha.
moral to cause pain to someone if they're attacking you because it's how you defend yourself. You know what I mean? If I pepper spray somebody who's trying to attack me, I'm totally morally in the right. It depends on the. I know that sounds kind of semantic, and it might be, but like that's like the dividing line for me with that specifically is context. Context is very important to that to me.
Gotcha. So what's the context with the fetus that changes that?
Okay, so a lot of people who get abortions, generally the cited reason, at least as I recall. Now you have a desktop, you could fact check this, but if I remember right, the number one reason that people get abortions is financial. If you can't afford to properly feed or shelter that child, I think that it's better to reduce that harm and not have them grow up suffering in the world, especially in a country like this where like being poor is just awful. Like it's if you have a kid when you're really young, the chances that you'll claw your way out of poverty are pretty low. Because that's just how the system's made. If you're born poor, you're very likely to die poor. So I think that like if you want to wait until you're more financially able to feed yourself and a kid, then it's fine. I think that like the measurement of harm is what's important there. Like my mom, right? My mom had me when she was 21. I was an accident, as most people are. And my mom had to work 3 jobs for most of my life until she managed to finally get enough wiggle room to go to college. I've been working with my family since I was 9 years old just to try to help out because we couldn't scrape together enough money. My grandma worked up until like 2 years ago. And if my mom had been able to wait to have me, one, she wouldn't have had me with my dad, who's an absentee father, and he has always been. And she would have been able to go into the military like she wanted to. She would have been able to go to college sooner. She probably would have been a nurse years before that. Like I think, and like growing up with the disabilities that I have, like the mental ones, and growing up with the abusive stepfather that we had to stay with, and my mom was forced to stay with because we were financially dependent on him. All of that could have been different. All that could have been very different if she hadn't had me so young. Like there's a lot of plus. Like there's it's a heavy thing to weigh. Like just to contextualize, like nobody gets an abortion like on a whim. It's a heavy decision. But a lot of times, like the financial distinction or not being ready, those are pretty good reasons not to have a kid. Like you got to be ready for that. It's a huge thing, and it's really expensive. Raising a kid from 0 to 18, according to the last numbers I've read, which was a few years ago, costs like $1.6 million. It's a really hefty thing to be involved in. Just giving birth is $10,000 alone, and that's a huge financial burden to put on somebody.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into play. Um, so I keep kind of going back to this because I think I hear some maybe. I'm struggling. So within your reasoning, I'm struggling to see why you wouldn't be in favor of an afterbirth abortion. So it's like if it's like harm reduction, right? And
Hmm.
and you imagined that um like
Harm
say some
reduction and
family.
bodily autonomy. Those are my two main things. Once that baby's born, it's its own being. It has its own bodily autonomy. It's its
Gotcha.
own like well, the question of whether or not babies are sentient yet, because humans come out like way underdeveloped, is something that people still talk about. But for the simplification of this particular conversation, it's its own sentient being, right? It's still reliant on the mother for like nutrients and things like that, but at this point, it is disconnected. It's its own body. It's entitled to its own bodily autonomy.
Yeah, so like what's the because I was gonna bring that up. It's like after the baby's born, it still requires the mother's bodily autonomy. Um,
Mm, to a degree, but it's not quite the same because now it has its own bodily autonomy. Like that complicates the issue.
gotcha. Do you think as far as bodily autonomy goes, do you think um the knowledge of the possibility of pregnancy changes anything? So it's like I've heard the example of like you go to a carnival and before you go in, like you have to sign a paper that says there's like a, you know, uh, a percent chance that you're gonna have a kid attached to you after you're done. You go in there and you have all this fun, um, and you walk out and there's a kid attached to you. It's like, do you have a right to then kill the
Mm,
kid?
I
And
don't
that's
think that
it's a
that
little bit
really
analogous
affects
to
much.
preg. It's a little
Like
bit analogous to
because I
pregnant.
don't think
Or
there
go
should be a
ahead.
punishment for sex. Like that's generally how that feels. Is like, well, you had sex, so you knew the risks. Because like, yeah, I mean, you might get chlamydia from having sex with people, but you can solve that with a single pill and just a week of not having sex. Should we like, penalize people for that? No,
Well,
I don't think people
so
should be penalized for
yeah, so
pregnancy
the difference would be that like w- we're talking about something that can feel pain and can have a conscious experience at least around 24 weeks or so.
either.
Some people debate earlier, but the consensus seems to be around 20 to 24 weeks. They can feel pain and have some sort of a conscious experience.
And to a degree, it's limited, but sure.
So it's like, yeah, we have. So if you go to the carnival, you have a ton of fun with knowledge that you may have a kid attached to you, and then once you get out, the kid's attached to you. It's like if you went there knowing the risks.
Knowing the risks doesn't mean that you're no longer entitled to a possible solution, right? Like, what do they call it? Oh, damn. There's a medication you can take if you get AIDS that can make you basically just like clear of it, kind of. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but just because
Yeah.
you know that fucking around might give you AIDS doesn't mean you're not entitled to the medication that suppresses it, right? Just because you know you might get syphilis doesn't mean you're not entitled to the penicillin. There's a lot of things that like you can know that there might be consequences, but you can still find ways to treat those consequences.
So
And I
okay,
think that like
so let's
knowing that you might get pregnant doesn't change the ability for you to, deal with a pregnancy you're not prepared for.
yeah, sure. It's like if you ride your bike and you go if you have a dirt bike and you go dirt bike riding and then you break your leg, like the doctor isn't like, well, you knew the risks of riding your dirt bike. Um,
Yeah.
the difference here is that we're talking about another being with that can feel pain and is conscious. So we can even make it more extreme. So imagine you go into
So
like
let's take this to another level, right? There's an analogy that I'm a big fan of. And I've heard it from a bunch of different sources. I don't know that I've heard Destiny say it, but I know Vosh has. It's say that like you were in a car accident and you went to the hospital. Shit, I can't. I'm so tired. Let me think. So
I
you
think
you
I
get in
I
a
think
car.
I know it's
The analogy that
yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about.
I think I know it. So it's sort of a form of the violinist argument. So it's like Vosh gave it. So
Yeah.
it's like you're driving down um the street. Maybe you're late for work or something, and you see a red light, and you actively choose to run the red light.
Mhm.
And then because you chose to run the red light, you then get in a crash, and um the doctors are there and the ambulance is there, and they say, all right, this person laying right next to you is going to die unless you give them your blood.
Unless
um
you let them be strapped to you for 9 months, like that. Yeah.
yeah,
That was the
yeah.
original inception of the. Yeah.
Oh, I remember it as like giving the blood, but yeah, we can even say that. So like,
He
um,
said, like, if we connect you through like a series of tubes, and that person has to leech off of your blood for like not leech, but that's just a word. Has to feed off of your blood for the next 9 months for them to survive.
yeah, yeah. That's essentially the thought experiment. Um, so
Do you have the right to say no? Should you have the right to disconnect that person? Because your bodily autonomy would say that you should. Morally, that is kind of up to the person because morals are heavily subjective.
so I think in many cases, actually, I think you should be forced to. Yeah. But we can even make it even like a little bit more extreme. It's like to make it a little bit more analogous. It's like what if it's your own child,
Hmm.
right? That kind of changes things like quite a bit. It's not some stranger, right? It's like this is your own child that you um are asked to be connected to, because that's really what it is, right? It's like this is we're not talking about some stranger here. We're talking about your child.
Even in that case, I think that, your bodily autonomy dictates what you choose. Now, whether or not that comes with different consequences is up to a number of factors, but I think that generally you should be allowed to say no. I don't know that you should be forced to. Now, I mean, like in the event of a crash, if somebody dies, that's, manslaughter at the very least. But in this case, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to like force somebody to carry through like a pregnancy because it's not, a sentient, self-involved being that's got the ability to be separated and have bodily autonomy for the most part. Like that's, this is where I stand on it mostly.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like the idea that that the the consequences of you may be attached to this person being relatively high, I think changes a lot of things. It's like so Vosh gives us the example of running a red light, but I think it would be more analogous if you were like having a lot of fun, like actually like running into cars, like where like um the chances
Mm,
of actually having some serious like having that situation happen like raises quite a bit. Yeah.
I mean that running into
Even
cars. I
with
don't know if I'd
protection
call
and
that
things
analogous.
like even with
Well,
protection and
see,
such, it's
that's one of the
pretty.
things too. Is a lot of people get pregnant even though they're using protection.
Yeah.
Like protect, nothing is 100% certain aside from a hysterectomy.
And here's the other aspect of it is that like um you have all this time before the baby can even feel pain, right? So if you're not getting a an abortion before 24 weeks, um I don't know, it seems like
Well, like I said, the vast, vast majority of abortions happen in the first what, like 10 weeks, something like that. Like
yeah.
very, very early.
And then so you could have uh like have a cap at 24 weeks, right? And then have uh like some sort of regulation after 24 weeks. It's like in cases of the mother's like life or something like this. Yeah.
No, I don't think it should be cat like the. I'm not really in favor of any kind of prohibition because prohibition just breeds black markets. Like anything you prohibit just leads to people finding more ways to do it illegally, and it just puts people in more danger. It's like drug prohibition. All available data says that the best way to deal with drug crises is to stop penalizing it and start treating it because like drug abuse is tied to it's like mental, right? So it's better to
Yeah.
put a focus on treatment, remove mandatory minimums, and remove uh, what's the word for it? Like prohibition, because prohibition just makes it more dangerous. It makes it illegal. It makes it so that gangs can profit off of it. Like alcohol prohibition, right? Alcohol prohibition happened, and we saw some of the most violent people who've ever lived profit from it, like Al Capone.
Sure. Yeah.
He only was able to get where he was because alcohol was prohibited. Gangs today, even the cartels, all exist because they are funded almost exclusively from the drug money that comes from the US because we have drug prohibition, and there's only one way to get those drugs. Prohibition in and of itself just causes problems. It doesn't really solve anything. There are things that are prohibited that are fine because they're not things that people are going to be able to get their hands on, like nukes, right? Like you can put a prohibition on nukes for the public because the public's not going to be able to get their hands on it, and that causes a lot more harm than a prohibition on something else. But prohibiting like drugs, alcohol, things that you should be able to choose as a grown person to put in your own body always just cause problems. And prohibiting abortion comes with similar issues. A lot of them. There was a woman in South America, I believe, that I read about that died because she shoved parsley up herself because she read online that could induce an abortion, and it caused such a severe infection that she just died. There was a lady, Ireland, somewhere in Europe, who had a miscarriage, and the baby was supposed to be born stillborn, but it just never came out. And because the doctors didn't want to be charged for inducing an abortion, the lady died because she had to suffer for hours with that dead baby in her until eventually she just went septic and died because the doctors couldn't risk losing their licensing and going to prison for taking it out. Like at the end of the day, the prohibition just causes problems. It doesn't really solve anything.
Gotcha. I don't know if that's entirely true. I mean, like, it's definitely true when it comes to alcohol and drugs. But we've definitely been able to ban things, and you started to mention this. We've been able to ban things and actually or restrict things and actually have it work. Like I think a good example is fireworks. Especially if there's like a reason for it, right? So we'll often here in Utah, that's where I'm from. Here in Utah, we'll often ban fireworks in certain areas because there's such a high risk of like forest
Wildfire.
fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out here
Right.
in Florida, they get banned pretty often, but people still buy them illegally and shoot them off at the beach, even though you're not allowed to.
Yeah,
People still buy illegal
but
fireworks. A
people
lot
still
of
buy them,
people
but
prefer the illegal fireworks because they're bigger.
yeah, but far less, right? And like if you want to buy them, you have to go across state lines, and you have like because we've had both like a pretty like relaxed firework laws, and we've had pretty strict firework laws. And with the strict firework laws, you see a significant decrease in the types of
I
fireworks
think
that
the other
yeah.
thing that would apply to is like the broader number of people who'd be affected by it. A prohibition on abortion would affect millions of people. A prohibition on fireworks wouldn't really affect that many people because not that many people are really that interested. Just like a prohibition on people owning nukes in their backyards wouldn't affect that many people because there's not that many people who are that interested in owning them. I think that might play a part into it too. It also like prohibiting things. I know I'm quite certain this wouldn't. Well, no, the numbers do kind of go up. But like prohibiting things often will make the problem worse because people go out of their way to do it. And because, it's illegal and people are trying to push it to make money, that makes the problem worse too. It's just everywhere that they've done abortion prohibitions of like pretty drastic type, it always goes really poorly. People with money still travel outside of places where it's prohibited to get it done, and poor people are the ones that are punished. That might be the biggest part of it, really, is that I think that abortion generally, like bans on that, only really punish like the most desperate people.
Gotcha. Yeah, the way I see it is that like
It's
um
like parking fines, right? Parking fines don't affect your driving record. So if you're rich, a $400 parking fine just means that you pay $400 for the premium parking space. But if you're poor, $400 could make you homeless. It's a lot of it comes down to like the way that it disproportionately affects impoverished people.
yeah, I recently just paid a $40 parking ticket, which destroyed me. But
Yeah, it can get to you.
yeah, I guess the way I see it is that like banning abortions before 24 weeks, I definitely see that happening where it's like you have all these people that need an abortion. It would be and but as far as like as far as after 24 weeks, like and you haven't decided to have an abortion, There's a little bit of a different situation where the fetus can now feel pain and can suffer, and having the
What about
abortion will.
people who are in really abusive situations who can't find ways to get them before those 24 weeks?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I would feel like yeah, that would get dicey. That would get dicey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the
Um,
thing, right? Is it like sometimes like you have to look at some exceptions and try to figure out how broad of a range that exception covers. If it
and
only covers a little bit, then you don't really need to legislate on the exception. But if it might be like a decent proportion, you might need to take that into account. Like that's part of the reason that laws are so vaguely worded when they're passed is because they need to account for everything. It's I lost my train of thought on that. ADHD is
gotcha.
a bitch.
Sure. Yeah, man. So the way I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about it in two different ways. There's the moral aspect of it, and so morally, I actually can see an argument for why we should allow abortion even um, after birth. Legally, I think it's a little bit of a different story, and we're kind of working in sort of general.
Hmm.
I think if we allow abortions to be legal after 24
Actually, me
weeks,
and Carson did talk about that, as a matter of fact, now that I remember. And I remember we were talking about like how to make a society if like the world fell, right? Like how would you
yeah,
rebuild society? And one of the things he asked
yeah,
me was like, what if a lady comes into town and you find out that she like killed one of her kids? And what I said was that we would separate her from her kids and make sure she's not a danger, find out why she did it, things like that. Like there was a woman who was in a cult in Canada. It was called the Anthill Kids, and it was run by a guy. I think his name was Roche Thoreau, and he got her pregnant. She had the baby, and in order to make sure that that baby didn't grow up to be molested by Roche Thoreau and to suffer like she had, she left it in the snow to die. And because of that situation, I think that was morally fine because like there's no winning there. There's no good in that particular situation. That's a really like extreme example, but like, a lady killing her kids after they're born would always come with extreme examples.
gotcha. Um, yeah, I mean, I see a lot of. I'm a utilitarian, so I see a lot of
Yeah.
examples of where you can um kill somebody or harm somebody just for the greater good. Uh,
I think part of the reason that people
uh,
don't do that is because we've kind of removed ourselves from nature. Like in the animal world, that's actually really common where like a parent will eat one of their babies or something. Like when you have hamsters, it's either
yeah.
hamsters or gerbils. You have to separate them from the babies or they'll fucking eat them. Like it's really common, and a lot of it comes from like food pressures and stuff like that, like resource pressure. That's the strongest driver for it. And I think that because we've removed ourselves so far from nature that we don't even really get affected by evolution at large, at least according to some theories I've read, that it's it's kind of hard to justify killing a kid. But in like the post-apocalypse, a woman might have to kill one of her kids to make sure the other ones survive. Like it like I
Sure.
said, that kind of situation will always rely on really extreme examples because that's a really extreme thing to do. But it's fun to
Yeah.
mull around.
So there's always going to be these situations where it might, something like that might be justified. Um, I I just think past 24 weeks, you're gonna have less of that, and by allowing it to be legal, you're gonna see more people having abortions that really just don't really reduce harm. They just cause harm to the fetus. Um, when
Well, you have to weigh the harm to the fetus with the harm that could come from it being born, the harm to the mother, the harm to like
Well, that's what I'm saying.
family
That's
at
what I'm
large,
saying.
the
Yeah,
harm to the fetus after it's born. That's a big
that
one for me.
that's what I'm saying is that like after 24 weeks is that you've had enough time to where you've probably most likely probably um there's going to be more at least help to getting it born, and you've already sort of uh what am I looking for? You may have already started planning for it. Yeah, I just feel like after 24 weeks, the chances of just causing harm to the
Well,
fetus, it would be
what if
greater.
somebody is financially able to take care of that kid, but after that 24-week mark, at some point, something happens? A medical problem, problems with the family, something makes it so that they can no longer afford or properly take care of that kid. And now the consideration has changed because surprise expenses
Sure.
come out of nowhere. And like a
Oh,
lot of people
absolutely,
end
yeah.
up bankrupt because of medical expense. If you and like if a woman and her husband are having a baby and all of a sudden that husband ends up with cancer, that's a bankruptable thing to treat. Some people are millionaires and then they end up in the poorhouse because they get cancer. Like sometimes life just throws curveballs at you, and you need the ability to deal with them.
Yeah, I don't see much, and this is kind of goes back to why I think a lot of times it may actually be okay to abort have an afterbirth abortion. But this also applies to my stance legally of where it should be capped off at 20 weeks or 20 to 24 weeks. Um, in that I don't see much of a difference between um, the birthed fetus and the fetus in the womb. Like they're both conscious and they can both feel pain. Um, so in the
I
same
think
way
that
that I
they can
wouldn't,
feel pain and be conscious to pretty different degrees. Like a baby that's born day one is more conscious in a few months than it was when it was born, right? It has more
sure,
abilities. It can see better. Like firstborn babies sense their mothers by smell, not sight. There's a because
yeah,
humans like the reason that our like animals can walk out of the womb and we can't is because like our heads are too big. And if we were born fully functional, we'd be born as toddlers. And at that point, it would just kill mothers. So we've evolved to have babies way too early. It's actually really weird that we do. As far as I know, we're the only ones in the animal world that do that because we traded a lot of things evolutionarily for our brains.
yeah. Have you seen those pictures of like the future human, and it's like we just get skinnier and skinnier, and then
Yeah. All like
big huge
hunched
brains.
over with the big
Yeah,
heads. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. So as far as like abortion goes, I don't see much of a huge difference between like uh a newborn baby versus like um a fetus past 24 weeks as far as moral consideration goes. Um but yeah, if I think it might, if we want to change the topic,
Okay.
because we kind of been
I
going
have
in
one that
circles
a
a little
lot of
bit, but
people have really strong opinions on assisted suicide. How do
oh,
you
I'm
feel about
very
that?
very pro assisted suicide.
So am I.
Yeah.
Some people are very against it, but I think that you should. I think it should be allowed just so that you can die in dignity. Like, or if you have a horrible terminal illness, you should be allowed to go like, I'm not gonna live, and I'm just gonna suffer for for the rest of my life. Pop a bag over my head, pump some helium in it, so I can die in peace. That's
Yeah,
actually the most humane way they've found to do assisted suicide because your brain doesn't trip that you're suffocating unless it's carbon dioxide. So you just kind of don't feel pain for a little while and then you go.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
they
very
they've been doing it in Belgium, I think. I know I'm pretty sure it's Belgium because I read a story about a guy who's like literally crazy ex dumped acid on him and like they had him in hospice for a while and they just wouldn't let his family see him, so his family had to essentially kidnap him to honor his wishes to have assisted suicide and drive him to Belgium to have that done. Like his situation was so bad that the doctors even said like this is one of the very few cases where we will not release pictures of the injuries because they always do. And even they said like we're not going to publish this because it's so bad. Like 80% of his body was burned. And there was no reason to try to keep him alive. He would not survive. They just let him suffer for a while. So they had to take him out there to actually like finally let him die. His dad didn't recognize him when he saw him. That's how bad it was. He thought that they had called the wrong person because it was his son and he couldn't recognize him.
oh wow.
Like Yeah, like, and that's how I found out that they do that with helium, and it's actually really cool because your brain has a little tripwire for suffocation, and it only trips for CO2. That's why some people have gone into like big inflatables and died in there because they didn't know they were suffocating. And when you start inhaling a lot of helium, you get like crazy high, and you lose track of what's up and what's down. It's kind of like getting the bends.
Oh, the
You,
bends. I
do you
need
know
it.
what that is? Just because I'm coastal, so that's something I'm very aware of. I'm not sure if you know what the bends
The bends? Yeah, it's a
are.
Radiohead album. Um,
Yeah. Do you know
yeah,
what the
no, no, no.
condition is?
So,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I took a I got years and years ago. I got scuba certified.
Okay, so yeah,
At,
you know what it is. It's when the nitrogen in your blood turns into bubbles, basically.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
when
You surface too
uh
quickly.
you service too quickly, you don't do your tables. Yeah. Um.
That's how there was a free diver that died in the blue hole because of that.
Oh
He was a
wow.
diving instructor from Russia, and he went to Egypt to dive the blue hole, and he went alone. And you can actually find the camera footage from his GoPro where he's at the bottom and he's trying to tap his watch to figure out where he is, and he can't figure out where he's at, and he just ends up swimming deeper. Because
Oh
when you get the
no.
bends, it's like being really, really drunk. Like you know those nitro Pepsis that they sell now,
Yeah,
and
they're awesome.
those things. I drank 3 of those in a row one time, and I felt so like fucked at work.
Oh
Like
wow.
the nitrogen gets in your blood. It's actually really, really bad for you. Like my mom's a nurse, and she was telling me like you really shouldn't drink those nitro sodas
Yeah, they're
because
so
that
good
much
though.
nitrogen getting into your system is actually really bad for you. But it made me feel like drunk, like really, really drunk. And that's a really light form of what the bends feel like. Because when you get the bends, you feel so drunk you can't tell up and down. And a lot of divers just end up swimming down. Because swimming in 3D space feels different because there's no ground to orient yourself.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
for
looking
sure.
into becoming an underwater welder a ways back because that's a fucking profitable business, but I ended up not doing that. I'm a little too afraid of the ocean for that.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot of different career paths that require some sort of courage in different areas for sure.
How did you feel about the guy that died in the submarine like a week ago? Did you hear
Oh,
about
it's I
that?
mean it's yeah, there was a group of people, right? Like you
The
talking about the one
billionaire.
that the yeah, there was a couple of them. Um I I mean
It was
I
like
feel
three
bad
or
that the
four
people that
billionaires
suffered,
and
right?
one of them's son. And that's
Yeah,
the
I
only
feel
one I feel bad for is the son because he was pressured to get in it. But like
oh
they
man.
had to sign forms that said like you might die several times in those forms. I wouldn't have stepped foot near it just because that billionaire had said at one point, to a certain degree, safety can go too far. If I'm gonna go to
Oh, yeah, yeah.
4,000 meters under the ocean, I'm not going with that guy. A lot of people were hinged on that Logitech controller, but that's actually really common for submersibles to use those kinds of controllers because everybody's familiar with them and they're really
Yeah.
durable. Like apparently that thing survived from what I read, that controller. But if there's any solace to it, it's that they probably died almost instantly. So there wasn't a lot of suffering involved. But like there were a lot of people who were saying like you should feel bad. This is a tragedy.
I think you should feel bad. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, it's hubris that killed them, and they shouldn't. They had to sign paperwork. They had to have a lawyer go over it. They should have known at some point not to do this, just because of the specs on it. He wouldn't even get it investigated. But to me, part of the reason I don't feel so bad about it is because at the same time, a fucking boat with hundreds of immigrants, I think going from like Turkey to Greece or Greece to Turkey, sank, and no one gave a shit. No one did. Nobody even talked about
Oh,
it.
gotcha,
All they
gotcha.
talked about was those billionaires at the bottom of the ocean. I feel bad for that kid because he didn't want to go, but his dad
Yeah.
pressured him into going as a Father's Day, and that's why that 19-year-old died. All the rest of them knew what they were getting into and totally wanted to do it. They chose to sign up for that. But all those immigrants were just trying to get to a better life, and they died. And nobody even like there wasn't a team scrambled to go try to save them. Nothing. not anything near what was going on for these billionaires that we knew were dead the day it happened, but they didn't report on it for 3 days because the Coast Guard didn't want people to know about their sonar capabilities. Like it's so gross to me the things that people focus on, especially in situations like this. I care more about those 500 immigrants, like these poor people trying to get to a better life, than I do a billionaire and his billionaire buddies who all knew that he refused to follow safety specs. That's just kind of how I live. I'm probably jaded, but that's how I felt about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, there's probably other things that we could have focused on more, but I still view it as
I
as a
mean, yeah,
bad
people die,
thing.
right? Like it is a tragedy in and of itself, but it's not as much a tragedy as some other things. Like the money that he put into building that sub could have gone to making hundreds of, if not thousands of people's lives a little better. It could have fed people, brought school lunches to all the schools in his state. He he fired every safety consultant that he had because they told him it wasn't safe. Like it
Yeah,
just up to a certain point, he knew what he was doing. I don't know. I find it hard to empathize with people like that, just because
gotcha.
the only pathway to becoming that wealthy involves you grinding people into dust. Like it's just I don't have a lot of empathy for people like that usually. It's hard for me to. Like the people that treat me the worst in my day-to-day life are the rich people. And there's a lot of them here in this town. And they are the meanest, most stuck-up people. They're entitled. They feel like they're entitled to everything. It's hard for me to empathize with them because I've had almost nothing but negative interactions with them. And then they go and do things like this where they know they're putting themselves in danger and they just don't care. And then I just kind of go like, what did they expect? Like part
True.
of it was rated only to go to 1,300 meters, and they were going down to like 4,000. That alone shows like there might be a little wiggle room with that number, but it's not, several thousand meters worth of wiggle room.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less sympathetic towards like the creator of the submarine, but when it comes to like the people on the submarine, because I get in sort of similar experiences where it's like I sign documentation that I don't really know what I'm signing, or like
Mm.
even if I read it and it says, "Oh, you have this amount of risk," like the person giving me the documentation might like try and like woo me into it,
Well, I
right?
mean, these people are extremely wealthy, so chances are they had lawyers read it with them. Like, rich people generally won't sign contracts for anything unless they have a legal team look at it because they can afford to have a lawyer on retainer to do it. So, like, I mean, maybe they didn't. There are some people who are that rich that are just like ignorant of the world, and that's totally possible. People who grow up with different pressures learn different things. But
I
like,
think
I can kind of feel bad for the people who died who weren't the guy who built it, but I have no sympathy for him. Like, he knew what he was doing. But the other people, yeah, I could see that. I mean, like, it could have been excitement, like going down to see the Titanic is crazy, but I don't know. They could have consulted James Cameron. He's done it like 40 times.
yeah,
He was bragging about that too. He was like, I don't know why you didn't just call me. I could have taken you down there.
true.
I don't know. I feel like that if I had the money to do it, I probably would want to be a lot safer about it, but I would love to have that once in a lifetime opportunity to like
It'd be fun.
go and see the Titanic. But I don't know how much I'd be willing to throw to the wayside. But then again, people who grow up with that kind of wealth and that kind of power, like a lot of times they get this feeling about them that they're like untouchable and it makes them take really extreme risks. I guess why so many rich people die in really stupid ways. Like one of the Waltons died building a plane in his own backyard and it blew up. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like
Yeah.
rich people do take really weird like risks because they just feel like there's nothing to worry about. Like everything goes perfectly for me. Why would I have to worry about this? If you
Yeah.
start out poor, usually you have a better mind about those kinds of things. But when you're not exposed to those kind of dangers in your life, it makes people
Well,
feel a little too tall.
it might also be like a drug, right? So it's like the bigger the risk, the bigger the
Oh, yeah,
reward.
it's like adrenaline
Um,
junkies.
yeah, for sure.
Oh, growing up in a surfer's town, I know a few people like that. Those guys will jump out of airplanes and throw their parachutes in front of them and hope they catch it. I
Oh
don't
gosh.
understand that either. Like the guy who jumped from low orbit for Red Bull.
Yeah, that's
Man,
gnarly, dude.
that would be so cool to do like one time before you died. But at the same time, I don't think I could commit to that. I was reading in Popular Science years and years ago that somebody was trying to design like a suit, like a mech suit you could jump in from orbit to like scream towards the Earth so you could go even higher.
Oh hell yeah, dude.
That would be sick.
Dude, do
Did
you
you
want to
ever
know?
read about the guy with the bear armor? Have you ever read about that dude?
Mm-mm.
This guy wanted to, I think he survived a bear attack and he wanted to build armor that you could wear to survive a bear attack. He spent so much money on it. He ended up getting a divorce because his wife was like couldn't handle him putting all this time into this. Whenever he wanted to test a new version, he'd like pay bikers to beat the shit out of him with it on. He'd have people run him over with trucks just so he could design this armor so that so he could like fist fight a bear. And he's on like Mark 5, and that's his goal is to get in a fight with a bear and see if he survives. But no one will green like this.
Oh
The guy is
gosh,
crazy.
that sounds gnarly. It sounds badass.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I can't imagine being that dedicated to something so crazy, but imagine if he does it. That could be really cool. There could be really good implications for that armor.
Dude, you want to know what would be like super badass?
Hmm.
If you went vegan, that would be the best, most badass thing in the world, dude.
Okay. Yeah, I think mom had to come out here for something. Yeah, man. I don't know. Maybe one day. I don't know about now though. I like barbecue too much.
You should yeah, dog. I know like beforehand we were talking about and for you was a lot of it was like the social aspect. Like the pressure of being the vegan at the barbecue and yeah.
Yeah,
Um
that's a big part of it for a lot of people. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Um I was thinking about it. I was like I would really encourage even like I know it's like cliche to say and stuff, but like meatless Mondays.
Hmm.
Um yeah, like just don't eat meat on Mondays or don't eat meat on Tuesdays or whatever. Um
Yeah, just cutting
yeah.
back meat consumption. That's something I'd be perfectly able to do. But like cutting it out entirely is a different thing. I mean, a lot of it is just like selfish enjoyment, to be completely frank about it. Is like, I know that it's not entirely moral, but at the same time, like, I like bacon. Well, I don't really like bacon. That's a bad example. I like sausage, like that kind of stuff. Like, I know that a lot of people, the way they compartmentalize their ability to eat meat is like, oh, they're just animals. But like, this is not necessarily true. Pigs are wildly intelligent creatures. But at the end of the day, like it's just I've eaten meat my whole life. It's something that I really enjoy. But at some point, I probably will cut it down or at least cut out of it completely. Especially with the price of meat, what it is now.
Yeah, for
Have,
sure.
have
I
you
would yeah.
ever seen Sweeney Todd?
Yeah, with Johnny Depp.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people who love that, like the Broadway play, really hated Johnny Depp's performance. Like they
Really? I thought it was
really hated
fine.
it because Sweeney Todd in theater is one of the hardest characters to play because his range is so broad. Like the range of his singing is extremely broad. It's hard to get.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? So like with Johnny Depp played it, they didn't do it right, and they screwed up a bunch of the songs. They actually removed a few too. Like in the scene with Pirelli, when he says like to shave the face, to cut the hair, one of the lines in that song is to pull the tooth, because barbers back in the day used to be dentists and surgeons because they were the only people with sterile tools that were sharp enough. So like if you need an amputation, you didn't call a surgeon, you called a barber because he could cut your leg off pretty quick, and that's what they would do. But like that's what the red stripe on the pole, on the barber poles is for pulling teeth because they were dentists.
Oh
But, like
shit.
they changed a lot in that movie, but I still like it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I see that they have Sweeney Todd now with what's his face from Stranger Things, um and they and Josh Groban.
Josh Brolin,
Josh Groban.
Groban. Okay, I was gonna say Josh
Yeah,
Brolin feels like a really weird addition to Sweeney Todd. I think part of the reason that I love the Johnny Depp version so much is because Alan
Frozen.
Rickman's and
Oh, I'm
Alan
back.
Rickman was traditionally like Shakespearean trained. So he was a perfect pick for the judge. And I feel like you couldn't make that movie again without like Alan Rickman because he's dead now. And it just wouldn't feel right to the people who just love the movie. Because Alan
Gotcha.
Rickman was such a talented actor. And it's a shame that we lost him. He's acted in some of the most iconic roles that have ever been. He was the bad guy in Die Hard. He was Professor Snape. He was fucking Judge Turpin. He's been so many giant influential characters.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Or like Sacha Baron Cohen. I didn't know he was actually opera trained. I thought they just edited that in his part for Pirelli. But no, he actually does sing like that. He's been singing opera his whole life. Did you
That's
see
cool as
what
hell.
he's been doing lately to like talk to Republican senators? He's been dressing
Yeah.
up as like a Russian, and he's like, "I think we should allow the children to have guns to keep the schools safer," and he gets them to agree.
Yep.
Oh, God, he's
It's
so
so
fucking funny.
funny. Yeah, it's awesome.
I just rewatched the Borat movies recently, and they're really good. I didn't like them when I was a kid, but I like them now because I get the satire better.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've only seen the first one.
The second one's called Subsequent Movie Film, and it's a lot of like making fun of people for COVID, basically, like talking to like the real crazy COVID people and just trying to get them to just be open about what they believe. Like the whole plot is that he has to come to America to try to get something to Donald Trump because his premier Nazarbayev feels weird that he's not one of the big strong men in the dictatorial space, so he wants to cozy up to Trump. And like shenanigans happen.
Gotcha. Yeah,
There was
we love a
there was a
Borat.
part of that where him and the girl that plays his daughter, he gave her like a cupcake that had a little baby on top of it, and she ends up swallowing that baby. So he goes to one of those like Christian pregnancy help places that try to convince women to keep him, and he goes like, "We want to take the baby out," and they go, "Well, it's a gift." He goes, "But she's my daughter. That's I gave her that baby. Would that change your opinion?" He goes, "Well, no." Like it was so weird to see because the guy thought he meant that she was pregnant, but they were just saying like literally it's a plastic baby. It was pretty good, man. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a pretty good movie. It's
I'll
not as
check
good
it
as the
out.
first one, but it's good.
Well, we there.
Whoa, we were very nice.
Very nice. Well, I think I might wanna cut this one a little bit short. I'm getting a little bit tired. I have
Oh,
work
that's fine.
tomorrow.
I just worked
But
like 2 shifts almost back to back, so I feel
oh
it.
man. Yeah, for
Yeah, our
sure.
AC's been out for 4 days. It's like 91 degrees in my house right now.
Oh man.
Oh
Wild.
yeah, it's killer, man.
I'm a weirdo and I like things warm. So 90 seems like fine to me.
It
So
normally would be, but the humidity down here is what kind of changes the game.
oh, for sure.
Because like we're right by the beach, so 100% humidity isn't really that alien over here. And in our house right now, it's like 52%.
Yeah, it can get gnarly for sure.
Oh yeah.
But before we go, what day are you gonna be what day each week are you gonna not eat meat?
Well, right now it wouldn't make that much difference. So I mean, as long as I could, get enough together. I mean, with the heat of the house, I probably couldn't do it right now because keeping vegetables is almost impossible with this heat. They just go bad right away. But like if we had it fixed tomorrow, I could probably do it like Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. All right,
Part of
Wednesdays
the
is
problem though is
meatless
that like at
Wednesdays.
my job, the only thing that they feed us is the leftovers from the roller grills. So like that's all meat.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's
It's
all like
okay.
really low grade meat too. It's terrible.
Go eat out on Wednesdays. Go get a vegan burger.
I'd probably throw like a salad together. I like a Caesar salad. Of course, you can't really have a Caesar salad and be vegan because Caesar dressing requires sardines.
Oh, you can veganize it.
I mean, pescatarian's easier than vegan. It's baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. Sure. If yeah, as long as the end goal is vegan, right?
I
If
think part of the
pescatarian gets
reason
there.
that so many people have trouble going vegan is that they just jump straight into it. And that can be really jarring for some people. But I think if people work their way down, they could probably transition over to it a lot easier.
Maybe I know. I just cold turkeyed it, right? I just dived straight all in, right?
Well, I mean, some
And th-
people can do
and
that, but
that
it's like smoking, right? Like my mom quit cold turkey after like 15 years and she was fine. Some people smoke for 6 months and they can never give it up.
yeah. It's just so in my experience, when I hear the people that are like, oh, I'm gonna transition, some of them will eventually transition, but a lot of times, even when they transition all the way, they go back, right? The ones that go all in, it seems like they go all in.
I'm not laughing at that concept. It's just I just imagine that being clipped out of context. Like,
Oh,
people who
gotcha.
transition.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha. Um, but it seems like the ones that go cold turkey, they go cold turkey for a reason, and that's because they really understand the moral arguments for it.
Did you know that there's some people who have to go vegan because they get bitten by ticks?
Oh, well, let's release the ticks.
If you get bitten by a Lone Star tick, there's a chance that you'll form an allergy to red meat. And it's like a severe allergy. They don't know what causes it. They just know that it can happen. And it doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes. And it can really fuck up people's lives. But they end up going vegan and they just live normal lives after that. But like
Let's
the first time
release
you
the
try to eat
ticks.
red meat after you get bit by that tick and you end up in the hospital, you're like, what the hell
All right, you sold me. I'm releasing the ticks.
happened? At least they're not bed bugs.
Oh gosh, dude, the worst. All
Bed
right,
bugs have been around since the dinosaurs.
oh, they've been around forever, dude.
Oh yeah, they're
Um,
older than a lot of dinosaurs are even.
so before we head, okay, so Wednesdays, but then also let's talk about this. Is that your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Um, okay, so yeah, everybody go subscribe to Let's Talk About This.
Eventually,
Uh,
there will be videos on that channel. I just have to figure out how I get StreamYard to dual stream. I'm sure I can figure it out at some point tonight when I can't sleep because of the heat.
and you can always just yeah, I think do you have a computer at all?
Not right now. I mean, there's a laptop, but it's not anything I can really work with. It's Annie's like art laptop, so I don't really mess with that. My
Gotcha.
girlfriend is she's a commission artist. So if that thing's on, she's drawing because she's a little behind on commissions. My mom's got one, but it's for work. I'm planning on getting one once I have some extra cash, so I can try to learn how to edit, or at the very least have a half decent streaming platform
Yeah,
that isn't $100 cell phone.
for sure. Yeah, because I think I'm not sure if you can stream from your phone. That's like the as we kind of ran into the issue earlier in
Yeah,
the
it might
stream.
be.
Yeah.
I might have to find out about that and see what I can do. Yeah, I need to get. I'm trying to commission her to do me like a background, so I can pull a face from that background for my picture. Because right now, the picture on my YouTube channel is the like change my mind thing, but it's just a red foreman with a newspaper, and it says, "You're a dumbass, change my mind." Because I just needed a placeholder,
Gotcha, gotcha,
but I
gotcha.
can't use that forever. That's copyrighted. And that's a little more aggressive than the vibe that I'm trying to bring to my channel anyway. That's why I called it "Let's Talk About This" because I don't want to just do debates. I like to do conversations. At some point, I hope to get enough notoriety that I can interview like Suzanne Black and have a conversation with her. And that's
Oh,
a
that'd be
that's.
cool.
Do you know who that is?
The name is ringing a bell. I'm
Suzanne
not.
Black is a woman who was trafficked when she was a kid, and now she does oil paintings that like depict the trauma of going through that, and it's
Oh,
used in
okay.
like
Yeah,
lesbian
yeah.
theory and shit like that, and like counseling courses to help other women who've been through stuff like that.
Oh, that'd be way cool.
Her
Yeah,
her art, like for anybody who might look that up, her art is jarring because it's literally meant to depict like abject suffering. So be aware of that before you look into it because it is a lot to take in, but it's worth looking into if you can stomach it. Like one of her pictures that really resonated with me is called it's called "Your Suffering Is Real," and the way I've seen it described most accurately is it looks like somebody dumped out like a can of human. It's a
oh,
woman
wow.
from the waist up with her arms tight like this, and they're all like there's like chains and shit. But like the way she does the shadows and the composition makes the picture feel very restricted. It's a lot of it's gory and it's a little hard to look at if you're not ready for it. But if you are, you should look into it. It's really impactful art.
Yeah, will do, man.
Mhm.
It sounds like I've seen some of them before.
It's spelled Suzzanblac.
SU.
A lot of it is like it's based around like women, right? Because she was a teenager when it happened. And it's like the pain and the suffering of going through that. But it's used for women who are in support groups for that kind of stuff because it so accurately depicts how that feels and what it's like one of the pictures is like I think it's called "This Is Our Secret," and it's just this really dark figure of a man with like bulging eyes hovering over like a 14-year-old. Another one is like I think it's called Mom's Boyfriend. It's a guy with like a cigarette in his hand, and he looks like a monster. Like it's all really harsh shit that I like it. Another
Yeah,
artist
that's
that I
awesome.
really like that I'm sad is dead is oh shit, what's his name? He's Polish. Like a lot of his art has been used for like metal albums. But one of the pictures that most people know is this thing with like white bandages around its head and like red in its face, and it's got these like distorted, really skinny limbs. Oh shit, what's his name? Zdzisław Beksiński. Zdzisław Beksiński. He's a
Shinsky.
crazy cool artist. Beksiński. He lived through World War II and he's Jewish from Poland. And a lot of his art uses Prussian blue, which is a color that comes from the same chemical reaction that you'll see on like the walls of gas chambers. And like
Oh, wow.
he died in I think the 90s because somebody asked him for money and he told them no and they stabbed him to death, or the early 2000s. And it's really sad that like he lived through everything he did and that's how he went out, over like $100. But his art,
Dang.
none of it's titled at all because he didn't want people to use the titles to try to apply meaning to it that didn't exist. But it's all like very H.R. Geiger, like bio mass type stuff, and it's good shit. His digital art wasn't very good. He didn't do it for very long, but his paintings are great.
All right, yeah, we'll go look at art. I think we're gonna call it here. So
We should look at that stuff the next time we talk. Actually, that might be fun.
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, look at
Just
look at the
if
different
we're
art
gonna
and
do that, just
talk
kind
about it.
of pre look at Suzanne's stuff and pick some pictures you think would be safe to show on YouTube because a lot of it's not. So
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I would like run through a couple different
Hmm.
photos and yeah.
I think Suzanne Black's art gallery is on YouTube, is on the internet for you to look at on its own webpage. Bakshinsky's stuff is pretty much all fine to put on YouTube as far as I'm aware. Unless it's nobody really. I don't think anybody owns the copyright to that, so it should be fine. Yeah, that might be fun. We'd have to put it through your screen, so you moderate that however you'd like, and then we can talk
Yeah,
about
it could be fun.
it. Yeah.
I'd be down to talk
Just
about art. Yeah.
let me know when you want to talk next. If you wanted to talk soon, I'm off for the next 3 days, so I'm good anytime.
Okay, yeah, I'll look at my schedule, see what I got going on.
All right, I'll see you then, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Just let me know what you want to do. I'm open all the time, so
Oh,
yeah.
sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you a message.
All right, man. I'll see you then.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for having me, man.